Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an issue that's quietly costing companies an absolute fortune and creating some serious risks: cloud waste. You know, the cloud was sold as this beacon of efficiency, right? But for so many, it's turned into this black hole of spending. So let's just jump right in and see how big this problem really is.
Okay, let's start with a number that should make you sit up a little straighter. $100 billion. That's not a typo. That is the estimated price tag for cloud waste, fraud, and just plain old abuse every single year across the globe. This isn't some small rounding error on an IT budget. It's a massive financial leak that's holding businesses back.
And if you bring that huge number down to a single company, it looks something like this. For the average organization, almost a third, 30% of their cloud budget is just gone, wasted. Think about that for a second. For every dollar you put into the cloud, 30 cents is basically getting thrown right out the window. That's a direct hit to your bottom line.
So this begs the obvious question, right? Where is all this cash disappearing to? And probably more important, what can you do to claw it back? That is exactly what we are going to figure out right now.
You can't fix a problem until you know what's causing it. So let's pull back the curtain and unmask the main culprits behind all this cloud overspending and risk. There are four big ones.
First up is a classic: underutilized services. This is that just-in-case thinking that costs a fortune. Companies plan for their absolute busiest day, like, say, Black Friday, and they provision server capacity for that peak. But what about the other 364 days of the year? Well, those expensive resources are just sitting there, completely idle, while the billing meter just keeps on running.
Next, we've got billing errors. And oh boy, are cloud bills complex. You've got pay-as-you-go, you've got reserved instances, spot pricing. It's a maze. And that complexity is a breeding ground for mistakes, miscalculations, overcharges, you name it. And the worst part, these errors can go completely unnoticed for months, sometimes even years.
Then there's unauthorized usage. This one comes from two directions. You've got the internal side, maybe an employee running a personal project on the company's time. But then there's the external threat, which is way scarier. We're talking about things like cryptojacking, where bad actors literally hijack your cloud resources to mine cryptocurrency. Either way, you get stuck with a surprise bill and a major security headache.
And our final culprit is the most sinister: malicious insider threats. This is when an employee, maybe someone who's disgruntled or has been compromised, has the keys to the kingdom and decides to do real damage. They could be doing it for money or just to sabotage the company. It's a huge risk that mixes financial loss with a potentially catastrophic security breach.
Okay, so we've met the culprits. It all seems pretty straightforward, right? Which leads to the big question. If we know what the problems are, why is it so incredibly hard for companies to get a handle on them?
Well, it's really a perfect storm of challenges. For starters, you've got a real lack of transparency from the cloud providers themselves. Then you throw in those super complex pricing models we talked about, and the very nature of cloud infrastructure is that it's dynamic, it's always changing. So trying to track usage across all your different services using your team's own self-reported data, it's often wildly inaccurate and just doesn't give you the oversight you need.
But look, it's not all doom and gloom. Not even close. Now that we really get the problem, let's talk about the solution. It's time to open up the prevention playbook and look at some proven real-world strategies to take back control. And these aren't just abstract ideas. Let's look at a real-world case study. This one tackles those billing errors we just mentioned. Check this out. One company was able to track down and fix an error that was costing them $1 million a year.
So how'd they pull it off? It was actually a pretty straightforward three-step play. First, they identified the problem. They had this massive, undetected over-provisioning of resources. Second, they did the investigation. They rolled up their sleeves and dug deep into all their usage patterns and billing data. And third, the solution. They set up automated alerts to flag any big spike or change from their normal usage. So simple, but so effective.
And the result of that simple fix? $1 million back in their budget every single year. Just by getting a clear view of what was happening and automating their monitoring, they turned a huge hidden cost into a massive win.
But hey, it's not just about saving money. It's about security too. Our next case study shows how the exact same principles of vigilance can stop a really dangerous threat. In this case, a phishing scam that was being run from inside their own cloud account.
So here, the problem wasn't a bill. It was unauthorized user accounts that were a ticking time bomb for a phishing attack. The investigation meant combing through all the login activity, and that's where they found it. These really suspicious patterns. People logging in from weird locations at crazy hours. The solution was fast and decisive. They immediately locked things down, enforcing multi-factor authentication and tightening up their access rules for everyone.
And this quote from the report really says it all. The key here was being proactive. They didn't wait around for the attack to launch and cause damage. They saw the warning signs, they investigated, and they acted. It's just such a powerful lesson that being vigilant isn't a nice-to-have, it is absolutely essential. So how do you make this stuff stick? How do you go from just putting out fires to actually fire-proofing your whole operation for the long term? Well, this last part is all about building these best practices right into the DNA of your organization.
Real long-term control really rests on three main pillars. First, you need clear governance. Who owns the cloud budget? Who's responsible for oversight? Everybody needs to know the answer. Second, you need robust financial controls. That means actual budgets, real tracking, and authorization processes that have teeth. And third, you have to leverage data analytics. Use modern AI-powered tools to constantly monitor your usage and hunt for those weird anomalies before they become big problems.
And this leads to a pretty big decision. Do you try to do all this yourself, or do you bring in help? Look, trying to manage this with just your own internal teams and spreadsheets, it often leads to inaccurate data, limited expertise, and a real lack of oversight. On the other hand, bringing in specialized providers gives you enhanced analytics and visibility, they proactively find issues for you, and they provide ongoing optimization. It's a trade-off worth thinking about.
All right, let's boil all this down to the essentials. Here's what you need to take away. First, cloud waste isn't a small problem. It's a huge, multi-billion-dollar issue, but it is fixable. Second, being proactive is everything. It's how you cut down on both financial and security risks. This means that comprehensive audits and continuous data monitoring, they're totally non-negotiable. You have to automate everything you possibly can. And finally, you have to build a system of clear governance so that everyone knows their role and is held accountable.
So, I'll leave you with one final question to think about for your own organization. Is your cloud spend a true strategic asset, something that's really powering your business forward? Or is it a hidden liability, just ticking away in the background, quietly draining your budget and exposing you to all kinds of risk? The answer, and the power to change it, is in your hands. Thanks for tuning in.